Ephesians 4:25-33 in the Christian Standard Bible read, "Therefore, putting away lying, speak the truth, each one to his neighbor, because we are members of one another. Be angry and do not sin. Don't let the sun go down on your anger, and don't give the devil an opportunity. Let the thief no longer steal. Instead, he is to do honest work with his own hands, so that he has something to share with anyone in need. No foul language should come from your mouth, but only what is good for building up someone in need, so that it gives grace to those who hear. And don't grieve God's Holy Spirit. You were sealed by him for the day of redemption. Let all bitterness, anger and wrath, shouting and slander be removed from you, along with all malice. And be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving one another, just as God also forgave you in Christ." In the book of Ephesians, St. Paul is attempting to describe what it means to be the church. In this passage, he speaks of what our unity should look like in practice. Eric Nevins, of everything Paul mentions here, what do you think the church today in America could use the most work on?
Is it a cop-out to say everything? Like, let's just start at the top, work our way all the way down? So, I think, honestly, obviously everything this is just good character, right? Yeah. Which is an essential part of discipleship. So I would say it probably is. It's going to depend on the person. But in general, I think there's a few things, particularly politically, as we go into an election year, that we could apply some of this stuff to. I think that'd be a good thing for us.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at this thinking, I don't always think of the church as something that puts away anger and strife. And, man, I wish we did.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good answer.
I think I will say one other thing. If be angry, but do not sin, right? Like, what an interesting admonition. So anger is not the problem. It's sinning in our anger. And I think we're seeing that it's easier said than done, right? I think Jesus was angry at times and we can learn from him. Yeah. But just being kind of having righteous anger, being angry about the things that anger God, about how people are exploited, people who are, not able to care for themselves. If we are, that would be one maybe application that I would give you guys.
Yeah, we're going to spend longer on this intro than usual. Sorry, listeners. It's okay.
Sorry.
But I just hearing your words and just thinking of like one of the most unfortunate things of Bible translations is English's lack of different verb tenses. And what we miss a lot in the Bible when it talks of drunkenness, when it talks of perversion, when it talks of anger or, joy, a lot of these things aren't these one-time things. It's not saying don't be angry, right? Like that's never a thing. It's not really about a one-time emotion of anger, right? It's not about, in my opinion, it's not about, oh, have you ever been drunk? Like, I feel like if we get to like what these verb tenses, what these things are talking about, and I know that's kind of nerdy to talk about like the type of dialect, whatever, but I think what we miss is it's more about the ongoing thing. It's one thing to be sad. It's another thing to live in depression. It's one thing to be mad. It's another thing to live in anger. And I think that's what the Bible really warns us about, is not to live in anger. Okay, sorry. Now we can go on to... Hey everybody, this is possibly your favorite church unity podcast. We're already having a lot of fun talking about Ephesians and church unity and being a little less structured than usual. I want to say, as always, the last 2 or 3 years, I don't remember exactly, we've had Eric Nevins on for our last episode to talk about Christian Podcasters Association, what's going on with Christian podcasts, what's going on with him and us, and all things podcasty, Christiany. And we don't really have a proper outline like we usually do. We're just going to be hanging out with Eric, talking about podcasts and Christians and what we're looking forward to next year, what we're excited about from this year. And it's going to be a fun time. I can't wait to just kind of get into it. We already kind of started to get into it. So I know this will be an enjoyable time for us, and hopefully it will be for you as well. Speaking of which, Eric is here. Eric Nevins, the founder of Christian Podcasters Association. I didn't announce everybody. I just started talking. Told you this wasn't going to be structured, guys. No, he's also the host of the Halfway There podcast. I think you host another podcast that you started back recently as well that we'll probably talk about later on in the episode. I'm here with the world's greatest co-host of all time, the one whom inspired the idea of podcasts. Apple is known for stealing ideas, and they heard TJ's voice and just wanted to steal that. So they started Podcast Up, and they never quite got it right until he showed up on the scene. How's it going, TJ?
Oh, it's going. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Thank you. Funny story, actually. You ever played Jackbox before? Party games on the So we were playing one last night. It's called Faking It. You all sit around and you vote on who's what and try to find out who didn't actually get the prompt. One of them is like Mad Lib, so you text the answers to your prompts. The prompt was the name of the last podcast you listened to. I wrote, I don't listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, that's accurate, though. He really doesn't. I think, actually, I feel like you listened to one ever, and it was about hockey.
Yep.
I feel like I remember that being a fun fact about TJ.
2 ever.
Oh, what's the other one?
Yeah. So if you like podcasts more than I do, you should consider checking out the Honest Out Ministry Podcast Network. There are good shows on there. I have heard a few of them because I've been on a few of them. You can get a paid subscription for the network on Apple Podcast. It's nice and convenient. You get a bunch of extra content super easily, which used to be a big problem because you had to go to like 6 different websites. But if you don't mind rating and reviewing our show on Podchaser, that would be extremely helpful. If it's more convenient, Apple Podcasts or Spotify also would work.
Yeah. Also, the Patreon is more convenient now because when you're on Spotify, at the top of the page, it says, exclusive episodes. So if you're a patron, you could just subscribe on Spotify and you never have to leave the app. It's fantastic. I love that they did that. I follow the Holy Post on Patreon, but I never listened to their episodes until all of a sudden Spotify did that. And I'm like, now I can actually listen to that thing I've been paying for. Really, I've just been paying to support them. But, it's fine.
What a world we live in.
Yeah. But one thing that is a big deal, Christian unity and my favorite practice of unity, the sacred act of silliness, where we ask a silly question. And TJ and I will answer it first because I just thought of it like 10 minutes ago, and it might be difficult for us too, but it'll give Eric time to think. Today's silly question: if you had to choose any one animal to play ping pong with the monkey, which animal would you choose and why? I'm actually going to go first because I don't trust TJ to not have the best answer, and I just want to feel good about myself for a minute. I'm going to go with the meerkat. Assuming we're going to allow them to play on the table. If they're not allowed to be on the table, they're just going to lose. But if they're allowed to be on the table, they're fast. They can grab things, and I think it'd be entertaining just to watch a meerkat try to play ping pong.
Yeah,
all right, TJ,
that's not a bad answer.
What's the better answer, though?
Yeah, me. I'm the animal.
No, that you can't say humans. That's not
you
right.
Didn't say that.
But would you enjoy playing ping pong with a monkey, though?
Yes,
for real?
Absolutely.
More than you would enjoy watching a meerkat play ping pong with a monkey?
Probably.
If you had to say an animal that's not a human,
octopus.
What would you say? Fun.
Because I bet I could teach an octopus to play ping pong.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. All right, Eric. Also, the octopus is still only
I'm going with like a sea lion or a seal. One of those two, like something like that.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
I did think about that. I was like, big.
Because they're trainable. We know they're trainable, right? And they like to do kind of tricky things. So,
yeah. A nice, well-trained seal could get silly with it.
That's right. That's right.
And silly is sort of the goal of this game.
Yeah. So, we've been doing this show for a little while. You've been doing the CPA for longer. But we don't get to talk that much. We're busy. So tell us what's up with you. What's been good for the past year?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's great to be here, guys. I really appreciate the invitation back every year. That's very kind of you. A lot has changed this year, actually. It's been a very interesting year. I feel like CPA, Christian Podcasters Association, is really my business. It's kind of the thing that I do. And I've been building it up over the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years, probably in different ways. So the Facebook group is free. And then I've been kind of slowly creating all these other offers and things that we can do. My vision for Christian Podcasters Association is it would become a place where if you're a Christian and you want to start a podcast or you have a podcast, you can come and really get full service for your show, whatever you need, whether you need editing or just mindset issues and coaching, community, all that stuff. That's what I'm really after. And so it's been kind of a big year for taking some of those leaps. We did quite a few podcast tours where we were taking authors and helping them get booked on shows that like yours that are good for them to share with with their work with other people. I did a lot of coaching, particularly in the last half of the year, which I just love. I love helping podcasters figure out. Usually we start with their message because a lot of us start out maybe not having that exactly dialed in, and everything else kind of gets built on top of it, and then getting all the way down to monetization where they can actually, whether you want your podcast to be a full-blown, say, ministry or business of its own, it's really nice if it can cover its expenses. Let's say that at a minimum.
Yeah. So one thing I'm always curious when people use the word coaching, I always just find it interesting. So, you have like what you do, I feel like it makes a lot of sense. Like you're coaching them in podcasts, just like you would someone's learning a sport kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also like life coaches and stuff. And I'm not against that. I know Christian life coaches, they seem pretty cool. What is the difference between coaching and discipling? Is discipling just the Christianese for the same term, basically?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that, actually, because I have a coach who says that coaching is the new discipleship, right? So he would say, absolutely, coaching is the thing that discipleship used to be. So it's getting together on a regular basis and exploring things like your life, your relationship with God, your mindset, to use that word. Like that's generally what I do in coaching. When I'm coaching with him, is we explore business ideas. What can I offer? What can I do differently? How would you handle this? But in that process, what he's really doing is, the business is nice and that's good, but he's really helping me grow as a person, right? In confidence, in joy, and like just becoming the kind of person that I think God is asking me to become in order to do the most good in the world. So that's how I think of coaching for sure. And I try to do the same kind of thing when I'm helping somebody, whether they're starting their show or trying to grow their show.
Yeah, no, and I like that a lot. I feel like not just in the church. I feel like we a lot of people. It's weird. A lot of podcasters focus on churches who don't disciple enough and talking about the need for discipleship. And I'm all for that. I love that. I'm not trying to like criticize that by any means. I just find it interesting that we discuss that. We don't really see it as much practice in the church, but it's also like a cultural thing. Especially now I'm working with a lot of younger people, and it's interesting how many people have the same thought even outside of the church of, no one really taught me how to adult, might be how, people word it, or like,
Yep.
Just basic life skills. And it's so I feel like it's across the board, not just in the church. I think we just have an issue where we lean pretty heavily on education and not enough on coaching or discipling, if you will.
Yeah. Or even mentorship,
Yeah.
So like I'm at a place now where I'm really struggling, not in a bad way, but in a good way, to get to the next level, right? To like shed some of the beliefs that I've had about myself, about my value, so that I can bring more value and operate within that at that kind of next level. And I think it's a good example. So the metaphor I always think of, it's a little corny, but of a butterfly coming out of the chrysalis, right? And like they have to struggle to do that, and that's part of the strengthening of themselves. And then they have to flap their wings and dry them out, and they wait for a long time. There's time before they really take off. There's a whole process to that, and I'm in one of those processes right now before I go to the next level. Even after that, but you have to have grace for that. You have to have room for that, right, in your life as a person or as a discipler. So I've been looking for mentees or mentors, and looking for mentees as well in my coaching. Like, who can I mentor as part of this? And the funny thing is, the more I talk to people, the more I coach people, the more fiery I get, right, about the about the whole thing. I'm like, wait, that belief's not good, and I get better at identifying it. And
Yeah.
not only them, but also myself, my friends, my family. It helps.
I'm gonna get a little personal and see what both of you think about this. Actually, it's something I'm just curious about. 'Cause I've been struggling with this idea of mentors, mostly because I'm kind of in an in between phase of going from some more really conservative traditional beliefs and not really to progressive, probably a little bit more moderate beliefs kind of thing, and just struggling with what I believe and what I think, that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And the problem with finding a mentor, because I always grew up with this mentality of I should have a mentor and then one person I'm mentoring. Um, but it seems as though when you find someone who wants to mentor you, they want to say, this is what you should believe, even if they don't say that, like they're going to try to guide you towards what they believe. And when you're kind of not sure if you want to believe that or not, it's kind of like, do I want that person as a mentor? So I've been going back to, I think it's Proverbs, where it says that there's blessings in a multitude of counselors. And
Sure.
I'm wondering if the whole idea of mentor is maybe a misconception of what the Bible meant. And maybe we should be looking for mentors. Is that kind of,
Yep. Yeah, I think so. I would say I have several coaches at the moment in my life, people who are helping me with a certain aspect of this whole process that I described, So yeah, totally. I think that's a good thing. Not everybody is going to be able to give you everything, right?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think the key is to look for people who are beyond you in a way, which interesting story. This is for whatever reason, quite on accident. My wife and I have always found ourselves in a group of people who are older than us, like by about 10 years for whatever, like
Hmm.
every stage of our
That's
lives,
neat.
whether it was partly because we were younger when I went to school and we were younger when we had kids, as people are getting older when they have kids in their 30s, we were still in our 20s. And so we were that was part of it. But even now we're finding ourselves in groups of people who are, in their 50s and we're in our late, let's just say mid 40s. Can we say mid 40s? 47 is still mid 40s.
Yeah, 47 is
I'm
mid 40s.
We could say
meaning claim it
42 and
right
I
there.
wouldn't question it.
So that's how old we are. So we're finding ourselves in groups of people who are empty nesters and down the road. And we got 6-7 years before we're empty nesters. But we're looking at it, right? And they're becoming their friends, but they're also becoming mentors. So I think it's a great idea. I think it's good to have a whole number of people and to be looking for things. And also, I would add, you don't know every mentor that you have, right? So I'm reading a lot of people like Eugene Peterson and N.T. Wright, and I love Sky Jitani. I got to interview him
Oh yeah,
recently.
he's cool.
He mentioned the Holy Post. I kind of fanboyed on him. This is my second time
Me
having
too.
him on my show, and I was like, dude, we should add your book to the canon. Like, I don't know if I can get that passed, but I would totally do it as a letter to the church, or at least the Apocrypha. If I can't get it into
Yeah,
the official
Yeah.
canon, would be fine.
yeah, it makes sense.
No, see, the
Man,
way I see it, if 2 heads are better than 1, then like 15 heads have to be better than 2.
Yeah, as long as you're not trying to make a decision, right? If you're trying to make a decision, getting that many people, then it's a lot of voices. But yeah, a lot of times that can be true.
I'm going to be a little weird. I'm going to ask TJ a question. Since we grew up in the same church, did I misunderstand, or was that sort of the model that was taught us, that you have a mentor and then a mentee?
I feel like I was never like taught a model. I just
So
learned from everyone.
maybe I just made that up.
No, I think that's a classic thing, right? So the whole thing, everybody should have a Timothy, everybody should have a Paul, everybody should have a Barnabas, right? Have you heard that? That's like that has been
that's
preached
sort of what I thought, but
in
I don't know
American
where I picked it
evangelicalism
up
for
from.
Yeah.
decades.
Oh, I believe it. I was just sitting there absorbing information though.
And it's okay, but I think also having the idea of having a plethora of people that you can go to, you should have people who challenge you too, right? People who are outside of your box. There'll be people that you like, but then you want to read or connect with and listen to people who maybe see the world a little bit differently. That's good for you.
Yeah. I know soon we're going to be talking about like some of our favorite moments in podcasting throughout the year and stuff, but I'm going to go ahead and lift one up. This week, I was recording with Christian Ashley and Brandon Knight. They both have different shows on our network. Christian does the Let Nothing Move You. Brandon does My Seminary Life. And I know you know Brandon. I don't know if you know Christian or not.
Oh yeah.
You should get to know Christian school. But I think y'all get along, but it was interesting because we were talking on systematic geekology. So we're doing like geek stuff, and it's the end of our year of cosmologies. And our last one we discussed is like Greek myths, Norse myths, Hebrew myth, because myth doesn't mean false. So the Bible story is still a myth. Okay, anyway.
Sure. Okay.
And Mesopotamian myths. And like it was interesting because there was a moment where Brandon pointed something out in my own statements where I was like, yeah, of course everyone has a flood narrative. It floods everywhere. And then somewhere else, I forget what it was exactly I said, but he said, okay, but isn't it true that all these other things exist everywhere? So of course they'd have those narratives. And I was like, oh man, yeah, that was inconsistent of me. So I had to like pause and rethink. And then 5 minutes later, I was talking about Genesis 1 and 2 and why I think they're two separate stories. And I brought up a point he hadn't thought of. And he said, wait a minute. So I just made you have to reconsider things. I'm going to have to go reconsider. And I was like, this is what I live for. This moment where we're like iron
Right.
sharpens iron, making each other think and challenge one another. It was great.
Man, I love that. That's great.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I love it when people contradict themselves and don't realize it. It's like you just said that's not how that works.
Yeah.
Out loud.
Yeah.
To me, that was the worst mistake you could have made if you were trying to make that point.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
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 I
It
don't know.
happens.
Do we wanna-
And you just don't even realize when you do it sometimes. And you're like, oh.
Yeah.
I think the key is to having the humility when someone points it out to not justify yourself, but instead go, maybe I am wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
I try to do that.
And not every situation is going to be analogous. So you might think one thing in one situation and something else and something different in another situation, and the context will adjust,
Yeah.
why you think certain things. That's certainly true in hermeneutics. So
Oh yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah. So we're gonna fill the audience in on what you've been up to for the past year.
Me?
Who?
No, I'm just Josh.
Me?
Josh.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're all doing this. I think this is true of Eric too. I think he also started a network this year.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, but we started the Anazal Ministries podcast network because we already had a couple podcasts. I was getting ready to start another one. And I'll be honest, it was friends of mine doing some other podcasts that I noticed were struggling in some ways. And I was like, how can I get my audience to lift them up and kind of help build their momentum? And not thinking full of myself as, oh, we're great, so we can help them. It was more of I'm seeing these numbers going, man. And honestly, some of it was, I think their show's better than some of mine. How do I build that up? Because I want that to get out there. So we kind of started this network so we can kind of pool audience more or less, share one another's benefits and successes, and be there for one another, giving advice, all that kind of stuff. And it's been really beneficial. It's been great, especially since not all the shows see eye to eye. It's not like we're a conservative or a progressive network. We're a network of people asking bigger questions. So it was kind of really fun to pull that together, see that happen. We hosted a podcast at 2 different Comic-Cons this year with Systematic Ecology. So that's part of the Anazal Ministries podcast network. So for me, That was something really fun. I was like, I've never even been to a Comic-Con. And the first one I went to, I'm doing a live podcast at. And I'm like, this is awesome.
Very cool. That's really
one of my
neat.
favorite authors used my mic, and that's how I lost my mic. So
they
that's
took it with them?
Fun. No, I just was so excited that I think I just wasn't thinking straight, and I left it there. Right after, no, they used the mic. They mentioned like, this is the coolest mic I've ever used. And I was like, I'm going to frame it. This is great. This is the best moment of my life. Alyssa Wong loves my mic. There's a comic book writer, but I was so excited. And then I left it there. So now I don't have the mic. Maybe somehow they ended up with it. That would be cool. Find out like years down the road, Alyssa Wong just has my mic somewhere.
Still uses it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Alyssa Wong and I have matching mics.
Yeah, that's
start a podcast of their own.
That'd be fantastic. Let's see what else. We got clearance to have our own book fair, so that's going to be something next year. But having that conversation this year and starting to set it up, that's kind of cool. And we were represented at Theology Beer Camp with Trip Fuller. I wasn't there, but we were represented, so that was cool.
I was there.
Yeah, TJ was the one that represented.
Cool.
I worked. Yeah, but since I mentioned network, do you want to tell us about you starting your network or anything before we get to what TJ did this year?
Yeah, well, so part of what we did, so like I said, CPA, I want it to be kind of a full service situation for Christian podcasters. So one of the things I did was start a network so that we could band together. It's very similar to CPA in general, which is sort of broad and diverse in terms of topics and ideas and approaches to things. But what we all have in common is we're all believers. I kind of put the only thing I like the Nicene Creed as kind of the one thing that we must agree on together.
Yeah,
and then
that's a good one.
beyond that, everything else we may disagree, we may argue about, but we can help support each other on that. So my goal is to turn that into something where we're getting a lot of traction. We can help each other. I've still working out some of the kinks and some of the stuff, but that's similar to what you said. Like let's lift each other up, do feed drops, things like that will be good for one another. So yeah.
No, that's awesome. I really think network is the next thing. So we're going to see more of these networks kind of coming up, and
Yep.
And I think that it's ironically, it's a really good way to be able to disciple other people, maybe the people that we don't know, because people who just listen to our show, they're going to get the message of unity, and that's awesome. But being able to follow the network and you get this message of unity, you have me dummy for theology. I actually quoted the Nicene Creed instead of reading the Christmas story for my Christmas episode over there.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we have that. We have the foul-mouthed preacher on one of the things. So you get this wildly thing, and then you have Christian Ashley, who might be the most humble and also most conservative Christian I know. And I'm like, wow, this is incredible. So
Nice. That's
I
very
feel
cool.
like being able to get in, hearing all these differing opinions and voices actually opens up new discipling opportunities where you're not being told what to believe, but you're kind of have this conflicting ideas and stuck with, okay, so what do I think? What do I believe? And my goal is for that to be able to disciple people that we don't know. Just the same, like you were talking about, like when we read books and sometimes we're discipled by people we've never met. So hopefully we're able to do
100%.
some of that through, our network and your network, and the networks kind of help each other. I know Joe Day has a Happy Day Ministries, and we kind of work with his network some too. And
It's good.
it's not like this is our brand and this is your brand, and no one's competing. For our listeners, it's not like a competition. It's just
That's right.
Yeah.
Once you know that the average podcast listener listens to 7 different shows every week.
Mm-hmm.
Your goal is just to become one of those 7. And there's a lot of interplay with everything else.
Yeah. Did you? I don't want to share numbers because I don't want to be that guy. But did you get the Spotify for Podcasters review where it shows like how many people you were in their top 10 or top 5 podcasts and all that?
I did, but it's been a few weeks since I looked at it. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, I'm not going to share the numbers here, but it's just really cool. To me, it's just such a special feeling when you find out you're like someone's top 5 or top 1 podcast, and you're like, whoa, that's crazy.
Right.
Especially when I get my own thing and I realize I wasn't my own top podcast, which means whoever was that top 5 or top person, it wasn't me. That was crazy.
That's good.
Yeah.
I know. I always actually thought it was cool when I first started podcasting that my family wouldn't listen to it. They didn't really listen to it, right? I'd share it, but they didn't care. And what I liked about that was then I knew that the people who were listening cared enough to listen to it, right? It wasn't just my family, my mom listening, which
your cousin.
Shout out to mom, right? Yeah. It's fine. but it's, she's not probably going to buy anything from me in the long run, right?
Yeah, I get that. TJ, what have you been doing this year? Is the podcast
pretty much nothing.
Or outside of podcast world? I mean, you went to Theology Beer Camp. I mean, I feel like that's a thing.
I went to
cool.
I went to Theology Beer Camp this year. I got a gerbil. I'm an amateur PC builder. That's all of the development.
Cool. What does Theology Beer Camp do? Like, what was your experience there?
Can you tell us who all you met?
Theology Beer Camp. Theology Beer Camp is great. It's really cool. It's you. As someone who was not really aware of the depths of open relational theology, going and being surrounded by it and engrossed in it for 3 days was absurd.
Yeah. I personally love, especially because like I have so many conservative friends who think of my beliefs as progressive. I love that Trip Fuller calls us his favorite conservative podcast. I'm like, that's great. It's just amusing for me.
Nice.
Yeah. So let's see, Trip Fuller, Pete Inns. Pete Inns wasn't there this year though. He was sick.
Yeah, Pete Inns got sick.
I met Pete Inns
allegedly.
last year. Yeah.
I'd like to meet him.
I'm Ward.
Yeah, I've not had him on my show yet, but I should.
Yeah, Tom Ward's
But
cool. He'll go
was
on
a good time.
anyone's show. He'll just disagree with you. So, you got to be ready for that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hanging out with Tom Ward for a couple days was really fun. Hanging out with Trip Fuller is really fun. It's a really fun event and extremely informative.
Yeah. And hopefully inspired TJ to become a Tolkien scholar. That was my favorite takeaway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there was a few Tolkien.
Yeah, I guess
scholars
that's like a side effect.
Yeah. That's my favorite side effect.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I've never heard of this, so I'll have to check that out for next year. So it looks like Pete
That's great.
Enns was supposed to be there.
He
Yeah,
was.
Yeah.
He
was just-
said he
he was-
got sick.
He just
We didn't believe him.
That's why he hasn't been on he was supposed to be on our show this December, but I think he got backed up with his sickness and other stuff that he missed. And
okay.
actually, it turns out for our benefit, this is how I'm going to turn this to things we're looking forward to. We're going to do 2 different series for Whole Church next year. The first one, Pete Enns is going to be on the first episode of. It's a controversial unity, and we're going to be talking about hot topics in the church and how we can have unity and disagree on some of those. So he's going to be on first to talk about how we disagree about biblical inerrancy and how it's possible to still have unity with that. And if you don't know, he's actually worked on a book with why can't I think of his name? Not Russell Moore. Who's the guy at Southern Baptist in the college?
I thought it was Russell Moore.
Man, I listen to him
Like Al
every
Mohler
day.
or somebody?
Yeah, Al Mohler. Him and Al Mohler are on part of the same book. And it's like 5 different views of inerrancy. And obviously they're on 2 opposite ends, but it was so cool
Yeah.
just to watch how respectful they were with each other on it. And it was like, man, even when they disagreed, like Al Mohler was like, my favorite thing about Pete Enns opposed to the other ones, he's at least honest about his belief. And I was like, oh man, okay, here we go. But yeah, it was fun.
That's really interesting. Wow. Yeah, that's a toughie, I think.
Oh, it is.
Who's interesting on that is Michael Bird. I really like Michael Bird. So he writes in that book too. And he just seems to be so much more well reasoned than
Yeah.
a lot of other people. Still conservative, but not crazy, which I like.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Because I love Al Mohler as a brother in the Lord, but there are some things he says that I'm like, oh man, why would you say that?
Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah, as my grandma would say, God bless him.
Which is a very Southern way of saying, go away, dude. Right?
And don't spill the coffee, man. Let him let him read into it.
I think everybody knows already. It's just I'm from the Midwest, so for my Midwest besties, yeah.
Oh man, that's funny though. No, we had him as TJ's getting ready to ask us about the thing. We're also have Tom Ward's going to be back. We're going to talk about like the continuation of the gifts of the Spirit. Do you know Trimper Longman?
I know of him, yeah.
Yeah, he'll be there. I think he's going to be joining us to talk about LGBTQ issues because him and Pete Enns actually disagree over that.
Okay.
And, that is actually really interesting. It's his book is Controversies in the Old Testament, and he writes and then quotes Pete Enns disagreeing with him, and then addresses his because they're friends. Yeah. He's like, and here's how he disagrees, and here's my response to that. I'm like, man, this is great. I love that.
That's called scholarship. Okay, so one other thing about this book, the 5 views on biblical inerrancy. Ooh, awesome. One of the other contributors is Kevin Van Hooser. I took Kevin Van Hooser when I was in seminary.
What?
I took him.
Cool. That's really cool.
Sort of. I mean, God bless him again. Oh. He's great, but I took him for a theology class called Holy Spirit, Church, and Last Things.
Oh.
And I think is a 14-week semester. He spent 10 weeks on the church, 2 weeks on the Holy Spirit, and like a week and a half on Last Things. And I was like, maybe not justice too.
Yeah, false advocate.
I understand why he may have done that now, but I felt like I would have liked a little bit more instruction on how I should be thoughtful about eschatology. Thank you.
We will be doing eschatology as part of that series too. I can't remember who exactly is on that episode. I know it's some of our familiar friends to both of us, like Andrew Fouts, Joe Day, I think. One of them. Something like that. Maybe Brandon Knight. Hopefully Brandon Knight. I love Brandon. Brandon, you're invited to every episode from here on out.
He's a great dude. I love what he does with the show. Anyway, I saw that and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I may have to pick up that book. And,
it's a great book. It's so interesting.
Or maybe there's like a video series. Maybe I'll just get the video series.
Honestly, the audiobook is pretty great too, especially because Al Mohler and Pete Enns both have their own podcast. So they actually have real mics. So the quality is pretty great. And what they do is each one gives, here is their statement of what they believe about inerrancy. And then each one does a response to that. and then they're allowed to respond to the response.
Yeah.
So it's like 5 different sections, and each section has like 3 parts to, each person. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
That's interesting. I like that because I mean, I know I've got a bunch of those kinds of books.
Yeah. It's like a whole series
as well, but I'm kind of interested in that because I've long ago, a few years ago, I realized I didn't quite believe in inerrancy the way I was given it.
Yeah.
For most of my life. And it's not that I don't believe in scripture or authority. There was something about that I just went, wait, my biblical studies training doesn't allow me to believe that anymore. And in addition to people who abuse that authority, right? They use scriptural authority as their own, which makes me absolutely crazy. I just kind of was like, I don't think I can buy that anymore. I think we got to come up with a different way. So I'd be interested in reading that to see what the kind of middle road is.
Earlier, you mentioned authors that kind of disciple us through their books. Tremper Longman kind of redeemed the idea of inerrancy for me, because he words it as, he doesn't think inerrancy is in everything is literally true as is, but rather everything that was intended to be said is true.
Yeah.
I'm like, I like that.
Yeah. So I would definitely be able to go along with that. I think it's certainly like the Bible is able to do everything God intended for it to do for us, right? Which is to show us how to live life with Him. So, which rules out maybe scientific inquiry.
maybe it's not even a history book. Maybe, I don't know.
Right. Well, oh man. Okay. So if you want to move on, feel free. But I had a conversation with one of my dad's friends who spent a lot of time kind of studying theology. It would be a very dispensational theology. And when I said to him, look, we can't take everything, like we have to look for what things are intended to be. So we mentioned Genesis before, the creation accounts. They're intended to do something, not to tell us exactly, precisely scientifically how the earth came about or how old it is. Like, that's not what it's there to do at all. So why do we impose that on it? And he could not see that point and thought I was calling God a liar, which ended the conversation fairly abruptly.
Yeah. No, I always find, this is my last note. I always find it interesting how people have taken all the genealogies and go, here, we could fill in the holes of this genealogy with this genealogy. I'm like, wait,
right.
Why wouldn't you assume they all have the same holes then? Like, how do you know, if you know that they all skipped some stuff?
Yeah.
What makes you think that they didn't all skip the same thing a few times or a lot of times?
It's not there for that purpose.
Yeah.
Right. That's not why those things are there. So let's don't make it do more work than it's able to do.
Agreed.
Anyway,
But also, I love my brothers who don't agree.
They're entitled to be wrong. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry. So what's?
I don't think I'm helping unity today.
It's fine.
So what's ahead for the CPA? What's next year?
Yeah. Okay. After I've just discredited myself to all the Christians by talking about what I think about inerrancy.
They still
in 2024 for Christian Podcasters Association, I am eager to take some of these pieces that I've figured out, that I've been kind of started. I jokingly say I accidentally started 4 different businesses in, kind of, because some of the things that I do, people do as their entire business. And I'm looking forward to all of that kind of coalescing around one theme and kind of being a core solid offering. Now, there'll be different people who take advantage of different things that we offer. Like I'm very close to rolling out a podcast editing service where you can upload your audio that you record and then somebody will edit it and upload it and do show notes for you. And that's just kind of a thing that we'll be able to do, as well as some other things. I think coaching particularly will be something that I'll continue to promote pretty heavily and to share and push into. I suspect, so we have a membership called Christian Podcaster Association Gold. I think you'll probably see that get a new name and kind of a revamp over the next few months as well. I don't think that quite gives the flavor of what I want it to. So I'm trying to find a good name. If you have ideas, let me know. You can reach out. And something that is a little more
communal.
Yeah, communal. Yeah. So like I've bantered things around like Christian Podcasters Club. Not very sexy. I want something a little more interesting, but something like that, right? That kind of says, hey, this is what we're we're doing. I think gold suggests keeping people out, maybe, or some things. I don't know, higher levels. So things like that. I'm projects like that I'm undertaking to kind of bring that kind of cohesiveness to everything else that we do.
Yeah. I think that people just don't know how much fun it is for us creative types. Rebranding is just a joy. Like I think people think it's work, but honestly, it's great. I love when I'm like, oh man, I think it's time to make a new logo.
Right.
Great.
Well, yeah, I think I just want to be clear, right? So that's one of the things I've learned as I've learned and grown as a marketer, that clarity is way more important than cleverness, right? So when I originally started that, I had kind of levels in mind. A lot of associations will do that, right? They'll have, hey, I'll get an associate level, I'll get a, membership or a pro level membership or something like that. And so that was kind of what I was shooting for. I'm not sure that's doing what I want it to do. It's not communicating what I want it to communicate. And that's okay. So I'm happy to learn from that and go, all right, let's do something different.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. TJ, what are you looking forward to next year?
Mostly just live.
Yeah.
Being alive.
Yeah. Are you going to go back to Theology Beer Camp?
I hope so.
Yeah, me too. We got a few Comic Cons lined up next year that we haven't done before, so that'll be fun. The book fair I mentioned, I'm excited for that. The book fair is going to be cool. It's originally it was a systematic ecology thing, but we're kind of slowly turning into a whole network wide thing, and having some people for different theological backgrounds come represent their books. It's the All Reading Counts Comic Con. All Reading Counts book fair. So we'll have some comics there. We'll have manga represented, different things, just talking about the importance of literacy, which isn't really like a heavily Christian idea, but more of this is just something I think the community needs, and something that Christians actually, for a long time, had a history of being the biggest proponents of. And I'd kind of like to get back to that. That'd be great. So yeah, just kind of, I say doing our part on that end of what I would like to see the church kind of lean towards. I've always been of this mindset of, too many people have ideas of what they wish the church did, and not enough people did those things. It's like, the church isn't some disembodied people like dark organization out there. It's you. You're the church. So if you wish the church did something, do it.
Yeah,
that's sort of my mindset.
That's right. I agree, man. One of my favorite things I did this year is I helped coach one of my friends who started a show called, I was just listening to it this afternoon, called the Big C Church.
Ooh,
and she's got a lot of really great guests, and she kind of these series about asking what is the church, and pretty interesting answers. Pretty interesting kind of the way she's getting broad perspectives. I think you guys would like it. You should check it out. If you want an introduction, I can make that happen.
Cool. Yeah, that'd be great. I'm trying to think. Nothing I was excited for. We keep teasing, and I'm hoping next year we actually can make TJ's hockey show happen. That would be great.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
it's a struggle.
The logo's
been working on that. Wait, who do you follow, TJ?
The Hurricanes.
The Hurricanes. Okay.
Carolina boy. Born and raised.
Right. Yeah.
That's good. I threatened to start a Cardinal show, St. Louis Cardinal show last year with Dan Luigs.
You should.
Yeah. Well, you know what? This year was terrible. They lost 90 games or something like that.
That's always a good time to start a podcast.
So I'm really grateful that I didn't. But here's the reason why, though, is I don't know if this is your motivation, TJ. The only reason I want to start the show is because I follow so many, podcasts and news outlets and things for the Cardinals, because that's kind of my team. And I just want to meet those people. Do you know what I mean? Like I want an excuse to say, hey, I'd love for you to come on my show and talk about Cardinals baseball with me. That's really all I want. Like, I want to be able to know all those people so that if I ever go to St. Louis, I can just say, reach out to people, know people. And
no, it's actually a hockey writer that I want to start it with. He's just busy.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, if you
already writes for the Avs,
there you go. Oh, he does? That's cool. Is he out here in Denver?
He's not. Oh, okay. He wishes. Maybe one day when they pay him, to be like their main reporter. If
I
that happens.
gotcha.
We'll see.
I gotcha. Yeah. I got to meet a guy named Manny Rendawa who was on my show like 2 years ago, maybe. And he is a writer for MLB. .com, and it was really interesting because he told me a story of how he kind of lucked into it and kind of followed it. It was kind of an interesting way he got into sports journalism and how he got that job. But super cool. He wrote a book about the Blake Street Bombers, which
Ooh.
Dante Bichette and those guys.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. So we
That is
talked about that.
interesting.
That's pretty
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah. Other things I'm looking forward to. I mentioned we're doing one series with this show next year. We're also going to be doing later in the year, we're going to do behind the scenes of the church. So talking about like what it actually looks like when someone becomes a pastor or a priest, or what happens with tithing, like all the stuff that people don't see, or like how lights and the songs and the atmosphere, everything is like put together at your church service. Yeah. So, it's just interesting.
That's good. That's good.
I'm trying to think what else. I know this is like cheating because I'm like just talking about our other shows, but I'm also really excited for Systematic Ecology. We do like an annual theme each year, and I don't know about you guys. For me, I always near the end of a season or something like that, I'm always like just excited for the next thing. It's like I'm ready to move on. And starting like last month, I started like our theme for Systematic Ecology this year was cosmologies. I mentioned that earlier, and about last month, I was like, man, I'm ready to just start the next thing. Like I already started building the logo, figuring out what the different things for it's going to be when we have those special episodes that are part of the theme. And next year we're going to be doing other religions and fandom. So just looking at like when, made up religions show up in like Lord of the Rings, or when's Judaism, how is it portrayed in our fandoms, or, different things like that. And I'm really excited to see where that takes us. And I don't know. I'm all forward.
Do you consider Jedi to be a religion?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. All right. Interesting.
I hope we do. Are we doing Jedi? Do you know, TJ?
Oh, we can.
If you're not, you're not
will.
doing it right.
Yeah,
I'm just going
we
to
will.
tell you that right now.
You probably should.
Yeah. Well, and the Mandalorian religions would be interesting to get into.
Oh, they're so fast. That's really fascinating. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And then they clash, so they have religious wars. And
also, we're definitely doing the Dead Space stuff, but that's
I don't even know.
That's a little less mainstream, but man, I'm excited. It's a video game that's basically a cult created space zombies.
Yeah. I feel like it's unfair when comparing something to Star Wars to say it's a little less mainstream. Everything is a little less mainstream than Star Wars.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Good point. Yeah.
I see that point. Yeah. Oh man. So we kind of mentioned already what we're looking forward to next year. I want to go ahead and just jump ahead. And what about other shows? We've talked a lot about our shows and your shows, and I did tease earlier, so I want to get to, you started back your other show. I think it was just Christian Podcast, or not Christian Podcast. What is it? I always forget that. Is it Christian Podcaster?
It's called the Christian Podcaster. Yeah.
It is. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So Christian. So I restarted that show earlier in the year because I'd started it in 2020 and did, 14, 15 shows. And I pod faded, which, the guy teaching you how to podcast, I don't know how that looks, but there was a lot going on, man. Like for a couple of years between, pandemic and lots of family stuff that happened in the middle of all that. So I just hadn't gotten back to it. And I finally decided if I'm going to do it, let's do it a little bit differently. So before I was featuring Christian podcasters, which I love. That's a lot of fun. Those are great episodes. And I'd love to feature and highlight people in our gold membership and things like that. But I wanted, podcasting is so good at letting people know who you are, right? Mm-hmm. Letting people hear your voice, get used to you, know, like, and trust, all that kind of stuff, that I thought it would be really good for CPA to have its own podcast about podcasting. And so I did a bunch of episodes on my own, and then I realized I don't like that. That's not my favorite. I would much rather have some conversations. I can talk on my own. In fact, last episode was on my own, which is okay.
Yeah.
So I was trying to do some challenge to people and inviting people to join my new coaching program. But then I decided I wanted somebody else. So I brought Amy Fritz in. She's got a show. If you don't know Amy's show, you should. It's called Untangled Faith.
Ooh.
and kind of just untangling some of your faith from, leaders who abuse it, essentially, I think would be a good way to put it. And she does very well. She gets a lot of downloads.
Yeah.
And so she's helping me out with our membership as well, which is really great. So that's kind of a thing that we did this year, brought in some people to help out. Amy was one of them. And so she kind of helps me host that show, and we have conversations back and forth, which is helpful because she's always staying up more on kind of the cutting edge of podcasting than even I do at this point. So it's great.
Yeah. Which does get to the last thing I want to mention before we, get to the stuff we always do at the end of our show. But I did just kind of want to see, like, if you had to, like, just list off a few, what are podcasts that people should be following like now? Like, what are some Christian podcasts that you're like, these are the ones people need to be, I say looking out for, listening out for? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let me think of a few. So we mentioned there's some that are just very popular, which don't probably need our help to promote, but I'll mention them because I like them a lot. We mentioned the Holy Post already. I like the Holy Post. That show might be one of the reasons I stay on the straight and narrow, right? Like that might be one that is really, really good because I hear the sort of reasonable and kind of like different. I don't know why it's so different way of looking at the world, but that sort of kingdom of God theology that they come at it with, I love. Okay. Definitely. We mentioned the Big C Church, Angie Ward, highly recommend her as well. And I also love Ask NT Write Anything, although is that still, are they still doing that? I think they might be, but
Sure.
For a while, I would say the same thing about NT Wright. He's keeping me in the realm of the faithful. Okay. A couple others I would mention that I really love. Michelle Rayburn has a show called Life Repurposed that where she takes the things that are, the junky things of life, right? And she repurposes them. And so she's got this great artwork with like an old abandoned truck that's turned into like a planter or something. I absolutely love Finding Something Real with Janelle Wood. So Janelle does great work. It's a apologetics show. Mm-hmm. So she's really she interviews people who are, what do you call it? Apologists. I was going to call them apologicians. That's not the right word.
I like apologicians though. That's fun.
That's what we're calling it now.
So much better. So much better.
Trademark.
Anyway, she does that. And she also brings on like a young woman who has doubts about their faith. And then she can have them ask their questions to a renowned apologist. Very cool. I love the way she does that. And then who else would I mention? I think the other one that I really love is The Unlovely Truth with Lori Morrison. If you don't know her, Lori is a private investigator, and she so her show is kind of like the intersection of Christianity and true crime. And so she's trying to help bring awareness through telling stories of how you can protect yourself and how you should be watching out for different things, including how churches should help themselves, right? So help just be the kind of best practices that they should have to keep predators out of the nursery, for instance, right?
It's always good.
Seems like here's the weird thing though. That seems to you and me like a no-brainer, right? Like, duh, of course you're going to try to do that. And yet, people come with all kinds of excuses to overlook the obvious. And so she tells some of those stories and gives a lot of tips about that. So I love what she does. I could go on and on.
You almost feel like you're leaving somebody out.
Yeah, there's a bunch of others on the network, and that's kind of I don't have a good page for that. That's one of my projects in the new year to send people to.
Yeah, we do have. It doesn't have a lot of information, but we do have a page that has all of the Exile Ministry Podcast networks on there, so people can check out. There's only 8 shows right now, so make those part of your 9.
There you go.
No, but let's see if I'm not cheating, so I'm not pulling from our network. I'll do my top 5 from Spotify because that's where I listen to all my podcasts, and it tells me what my top 5 are. Let's see. Number 1, I think, was actually Advisory Opinions. It's a law show, but man, it's a really good legal show if you're gonna like listen to law stuff. It's fun. Let's see.
I feel
2
like
was actually
I feel like it should be mentioned. Josh does want to be a lawyer.
that's true.
Oh.
Yeah.
So if
cheat.
you aren't interested in law, that one might
It
not
might
be for
not
you.
be. Yeah.
Are
But
you studying?
Yeah. Actually, I'm in a pre-law now. That was something I did this year. That was
I didn't know
2023,
that.
2024. I'm looking forward to law school. Woot woot! I graduated
Are-
this year too. I guess I got my Bible
Are you
degree.
starting in the
This was a
when
big
are you
year.
starting?
I'm currently in a paralegal study. Next year, I'll start law school in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah. pretty fun.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
Yeah. If somehow I do law school and end up with more time, which isn't going to happen, I might start a Christian law podcast. That'd be great. I've thought about it, and I was like, nah. The problem with that is there's no way I'll have time to do it.
Yeah. No, you're gonna have to study, man. Do it.
Yeah, it's gonna be
We
crazy.
need it.
Yeah, I'm excited for it though. Let's say number 1, Advisory Opinions. Number 2 was actually Systematic Ecology, because believe it or not, there are plenty of episodes from that show that I'm not on, and so I haven't fully listened to it. Like when you edit, you listen to it, but you're listening only for noises or certain like things. You're not just listening to it, so you don't get to take it in. So sometimes, I just listen to it because I'm like, what did Christian and TJ say about Dragon Ball? I don't know. Let me hear. So that ended up being my number 2. My number 3 was Holy Post. So, 4 was actually a show Unbelievable. So it's an apologetic show that takes place. I think it's all like England, it's Europe. Yeah, it's apologicians from England.
Justin Brierley.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to hear that one, because it's not just like your typical, how do we defend the faith? But it's genuine conversations from people who are defending the faith and not defending the faith. And because it's in Europe, they struggle with much different questions than America. So I don't know if you are familiar, like some of the stuff that we hear here, I just get really tired of. I'm tired of hearing people defending why evolution isn't true or why this isn't. When it's more about actually the faith and the theology part that they're getting at, rather than trying to create your own science, it's just more interesting. So I like that show a lot. Number 5 was actually Morning Joe. So instead of recommending Morning Joe, because I kind of hate listening to that, I'm going to recommend Good Faith. I don't remember who the guy's name who does that, but he has people from across the faith just discussing how we can be people who are Christians that are benefiting the world around us. And they have a bunch of different diverse things. Honestly, it's just a really stereotypical Christian podcast, in my opinion, but it's fun. It's nice. I like it. Yeah.
Cool.
TJ, you don't listen to podcasts, so I assume you don't have any recommendations.
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. So with that, let's jump to one thing we always do. We always ask our guest if they just had a tangible action that people could go do right now that'll help better bring more unity to the church. What action would it be? What would you have people stop and do right now to help engender unity?
I would say make dinner plans with somebody that you know who maybe has a different view on things than you. And it doesn't have to be heated or difficult, but even just having a question or two to kind of get things started and have an honest conversation about why they believe what they believe, or they've chosen life choices that they've chosen that maybe you don't understand. Those kinds of things, proximity, breeds unity, right? It breeds care and concern and compassion. So I would say do something that allows you to have a little bit more of that. That's the best thing I can offer.
Yeah.
All right. So what changes in the world around us if everyone does that? I feel like people learn to cook, at least.
That's good. Yeah. Learning to cook is a great thing.
Yeah.
I think if we understand each other, at least where other people are coming from. I was telling my sister today, we were having a long conversation on a drive home, and I was telling her, I just don't care what other people do anymore. Like there's right and there's wrong. But I grew up in a world where we just cared way too much about what everybody's doing. What I care about now is, does God love the person in front of me? Right. I think the answer typically is universally yes. Right. If that's the case, then my job is to help them become the person that God intended for them to be, that God's calling them to be, whatever that next level is. And that takes time, and that takes grace to be where they are. So that's okay. Like it's not on me to force or rush that, but it is on me to love, care, and maybe nurture as much as God calls me to. And so it's fine.
Yeah. Tom Ord's been on our show a few times this year. This is actually when we met him, was this year. And what's interesting is we very openly disagree about omnipotence. But he's challenged me because of his belief that God can't do everything. He more focuses on this idea that he has to be a partner in the work of love. And just kind of hearing him talk about that has really challenged me of like, how much am I actively loving? And how much am I just kind of saying, oh, God loves people? I'm like, oh man. Because, even if I disagree with him, I do think I could do more. Like, I think I could be better at that loving thing. And making dinner plans.
Isn't that an interesting thing? Like, I just think there's something about what was that phrase you just used that Thomas Ord used? Like
partnering in God's love. Something like that.
Partnering in love. Yes. Okay. So I talk about this so often with podcasters, right? So like life is a partnership with God. So you are not, it is not always just up to him. And I grew up in a world where that was kind of the case. Well, I'll pray about it, or I'll see what God wants me to do, or whatever. But really, it's up to you to act. If you feel convicted of something, it's up to you to take actions and leave the results up to him, right? This is the way in Philippians 2, right? Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. That's on you. For it's God who's at work, right? That's on him. And so there's a partnership even in our salvation, right? That we have to dive into. But I think in our sanctification as well. And so, dude, I would totally go with that. Like our job is to love and let God do the work. Let him be responsible for the results. As we do that, I just think we're going to grow. And like you asked the question earlier, what happens in the world? I think we become known for our love, which is the whole point.
Yeah. TJ, could you quote the Lorax? You know that line? If someone like you, I like hearing you say it. It's fun.
Oh, hold on. Oh. No, I can't remember.
He doesn't remember it. I think it's the line goes, if someone like you doesn't care a whole awful lot, nothing will change. No, it will not. Something like that. It's close.
That sounds approximately right.
Yeah, it's more fun to hear TJ do that because TJ's mustache inspired the creation of the Lorax. Actually. Also, speaking of TJ myth, this is my other favorite development of the year. TJ went from having a camera that made everything look purple, even though it wasn't, to getting a camera where it didn't look purple on his screen, to then creating a purple light in his computer so that once again everything looks purple on his screen.
It's true.
Just on purpose because you wanted to be purple?
It just looks good when it's purple. So
I
changed
like that.
all the lights in my PC.
TJ is Mr. Purple.
I'll tell you, if I had known, I would have matched you.
Ooh.
Oh, thank you.
Man, I feel so uncool
Can
right
you not?
now.
I thought that was a Philips Hue light.
My goal for next year is to have purple lights in here.
So this is one of the things I've been trying to do. Like, so I just put these up. I've had kind of lights back there, but I just put these up to kind of create that kind of background, whatever I want to do. So
I could have sworn there was a Philips Hue light in that room, Josh.
Oh, there was, but it broke.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, you definitely can.
The hub for it broke.
Make yours also purple.
Next year on the Whole Church Podcast. Purple is
dude,
the color.
I'm gonna hold you to that.
Here we
if
go.
I come back next year and you don't have a purple light, I'm not even coming.
I really think I should. I really think
I should checking out.
It's just part of our theme. Next year's theme is purple.
Also, I expect you to license Purple Rain. Just saying.
We should.
Okay, if we have a really good year,
please join our Patreon ad.
We're gonna need a lot of support or a cover. So,
okay, if we have a great year,
I don't think the Prince of State just gives out that license. So Before we wrap up, we like to take a moment to ask everyone to share a moment they saw God in recently, whether it's a blessing, a challenge, a moment of worship occurs, anything like that. And I always make Joshua go first because I feel like he's usually the most prepared.
This I'm gonna be that annoying guy who talks about his wife now.
As long as you don't call
Yeah.
her like smoking hot, we're fine.
I don't have to say it. People know. No, I this week I've I got all the presents for my family for the most part, and I was going through everything that I got, and we went through Amazon. She's like, wait a minute, you didn't get your mom enough stuff, and she was just picking out stuff for my mom, and it's one of those where like I guess we're young married enough, like we haven't been married like a huge amount of time yet that it's like, oh wow, this is this is my family caring about my family, and it was just that was a special moment for me. I then couple that with yesterday we went to dinner with her boss and her coworkers, and just hearing her boss talk about how great she is and her professionalism at work, and I'm just like, oh man, I am so blessed to be with such an incredible woman, and I'm just I'm feeling blessed. Yeah, that's mine.
Sounds
Sorry
like
to be that guy.
she's an incredible actor.
I think she's great.
I will go next, just out of courtesy.
Yeah.
I was able to get a few days off of work to just sit in my own house and live without work.
Are you off Thursday?
No. It was
man,
the
I was gonna
past
say.
4 days.
Oh, well, we could have went and watched Godzilla -1.
I was busy.
Oh, okay.
He was doing nothing, man. He was living in his house.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Well, me and Christian are going to watch Godzilla -1 Thursday.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. You should get off
What
work.
time?
Probably later in the evening.
No, I can't do it. But yeah, I'm just blessed to not only get the opportunity, but for everyone else I was able to see, to have the opportunity for that to happen. And it is great.
That is good.
God is in the little things. So, Eric, do you have a God moment for us this week? You only get one a year. You better make it count.
I know, right? I feel like I've probably had several. I'll tell you a story. So there was a moment that I had. One thing I've done since COVID is to just embrace things that I enjoy more. And one of those things is concerts. I love concerts. Now, I'm significantly older than you guys. So the concerts that I go to are people who, were popular back in my day. But
I probably still like them though.
Yeah, you probably do. So one that I went to that was just amazing for me was Bryan Adams. I went to go see him. Like I literally drove back from Iowa back to my home in Colorado. Was here for like 3 hours, and I drove back downtown Denver and went to the show. And it was fantastic. It was exactly what I needed. And in the middle of this, we've had some real church struggles over the last couple of years. I'll just tell you that. In the middle of this concert, I'm like, got my hands up, I'm waving. I'm like, I was by myself. I was going, rocking it out, having a great time, enjoying the music. And this little voice in the back of my head goes, you shouldn't be worshiping that guy. Right. And I was like, what is that? What was that? And so then I had to ask, I kind of prayerfully was asking like, what is that? What's going on? And I kind of shoved it aside, enjoyed the rest of the show. And then getting out of there was kind of busy. And so it took me a little bit. I was in the parking lot sitting, waiting to get out. And I was kind of prayerfully having a conversation with the Lord about like, what is that? What is that? And the verse that came to mind was in 1 Timothy 4 about those who like have nothing to do with godless wives' tales, right? Something like that. Yeah. Something godless myths and old wives' tales, I think is how he says it. Mm-hmm. And so then I started reading that whole passage, and I realized the people who used to tell me things like that, are really just hung up on, godless myths and old wives' tales. He goes on to say there's a passage about eating meat to sacrifice to idols, right? Yeah. And he says, look, God's given us everything, and it should all be received with thanksgiving. And so I just adopted that attitude, and I felt like the Lord really showed me that, hey, this is something that gives you joy, and you're not worshiping these guys, you're enjoying what I've created and given to these people as gifts, right? That was a really significant moment for me this year to remember that the Lord gives good gifts and I can enjoy them without any kind of shame or judgment that maybe I'd had in the past, and it was a good thing.
Yeah. That's actually
All right.
something gets brought up a lot on our other show, Systematic Ecology, because, we talk about like, there is this level of, is it consuming me or is it something that gives me joy? And, a lot of times, sometimes I read Hellboy and I'm like, man, that actually has some interesting theological implications. Let's talk about that. And then sometimes you're just like, you know what? I want to watch Godzilla vs. Kong because I want to see two monsters punch each other. And it's okay to be excited about that.
Yeah. I just enjoy it. And I think that is okay. I mean, because even think about the whole idea of the creativity that it takes to create Godzilla, that it takes to create those movies. All that reflects God and his image, like even that kind of, wildness. I just don't think, I think your joy pleases him. I think he's happy with that. There's nothing there. Maybe there's bounds, maybe there's limits, but not what I was doing. Like there was no, so
yeah,
I don't know. I think we have a lot more latitude in that. And it was a real great application for me. So I went to go see the Goo Goo Dolls later that year. And what else did I see? I saw a couple others. Next year though, you can ask me about these next year. I'm going to see Hootie and the Blowfish.
Ooh.
Alanis Morissette. Def Leppard's coming back to Coors Field. Def Leppard and Journey. I'm gonna go see them. Told you I was old. Cool. And then who's the other one? Sammy Hagar with Joe Satriani on guitar. Sign me up, man. I can't wait. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna have a great time.
It's actually pretty awesome. What a lineup for a year.
Great.
Oh, yeah. TJ
His
might
band,
be at a few of those concerts.
He's got so great. He's got so Sammy Hagar, obviously is cool. He's got Michael Anthony from Van Halen as on bass, Joe Satriani on guitar, which he's a virtuoso, and then Jason Bonham, the John Bonham's son, on drums. Like that's a super band. As soon as I saw the line, I was like, yes, sign me up. I will go. Let's go. And it's at Red Rocks in Colorado.
Oh,
so
beautiful.
Come on,
that's
in summer. As long as I don't get hailed on, it'll be great.
Yeah, that's right. Even if you get hailed on,
that happened last year up there. Ooh. They got hailed on. They had to call like paramedics.
Yeah, bring a strong hat.
That's right. Yeah, bring a hard hat.
Strong hat.
Yeah, hard hats are
anyway. There you go.
Just bring a nice thick hat.
Well, that was my veering from a God moment to like now look what I'm gonna do.
Hey, that's all. Yeah. That all sounds good to me. You only had one. You had to make it count.
Yeah, that's true. And you set up next year's God moment. We're already anticipating.
Yeah. I'm waiting to hear how Alanis Morissette was.
Right. I'm so excited about it. The first time I heard You Ought to Know, I will not forget it. I was at Pizza Hut in Altoona, Iowa. It was amazing.
Man. So if you enjoyed the episode, if you enjoyed catching up with us, next time try not needing to. Just listen to every episode we release for the next 350-ish days. But if you just like this episode, consider sharing it with a friend, share it with an enemy, share it with your cousins.
Yeah, preferably cousins. We like them.
We'd love to be your cousin's favorite podcast. Super fun fact. And come hang out with us in our Discord server. The link's in the show notes. Come bother us. Fastest person to get Josh to mute them wins $1. I just need proof.
I just love how we have like all these different things to plug. And just so you know, TJ just plugs Discord because I think he just desperately wants people to get on there to bug me. Like it's like the one thing that people haven't done yet. That's our goal 2024 to get you guys actually on Discord. Also, while you're there, check out the MSL Ministry Podcast Network. The link, show notes down below, that stuff. You can see all the 8 shows. Make them 8 of your 9. The other one has to be Halfway There by Eric Nevins. You're legally obligated. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
I want to also lobby that you put on a t-shirt your cousin's favorite podcast.
That's
a great
Whole Church Podcast, your cousin's favorite show.
Yeah, that's a good one.
We should do that.
Yeah, we're not paying you for that idea. So we hope you enjoyed it.
You can have it.
After taking a couple weeks off the new year, we will have Jared Bias on to discuss his book, Love Matters More, how fighting to be right keeps us from loving like Jesus. After that, we'll be interviewing Brianna and Matthew Penfold about millennials' perspectives on ministry today. Also, side note, I thought that was Brianna and Matthew like that we know and have known for a
No.
long time. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Following
I
that,
thought
we
the
will
same.
be starting a mini-series called Controversial Unity, discussing how we can have unity whilst disagreeing about hot topic items like LGBTQ issues, speaking in tongues, biblical inerrancy, and more, with exciting return guests, including Pete Inns, Tom Ord, Trip Fuller, Trimper Longman III, and then finally, at the end of Season 1, Francis Chan will be joining us.
Yeah, he doesn't know that, though. So
He doesn't know that. We can't wait.
Still,
And of course,
it's been a
you guys are
long
still working
time
on him.
yeah. Well, working is a strong word.
Well, I was going to say, what have you done? All right,
No,
as the podcast coaching me is going to come out, and you're
we
already
haven't
playing
really
music, so
put
I'll
much
shut up.
effort
All right,
into it. Just
Go ahead.
we're hoping our guest, our listeners will reach out. So
Somebody will make
listeners,
the
get with
demand.
Eric Nevins so that Eric can coach you to get
Okay.
Francis Chan on our show. Yeah, that's the goal.
It's got to
There
be a
you
group
go.
effort.
Yeah. Thank you for
Fair
listening.
enough.